I actually had a quick question, and would love your sort of thoughts on this. But now, what the question was, I have forgotten. But it was a very good question. Just one
I,
second.
I I appreciate your question, and I will respond with saying, "Great question. I agree with your point of view."
Abhi, yaar, but it was a really good question, yaar. Oh, I was answering your question and I forgot.
Welcome to Think Fast with Rinku and Rinku's friend.
You are Rinku, and I'm Rinku's friend.
I know you don't watch IPL,
Basically,
but yesterday's
what
match,
are
when
these
we're
new
recording this on a
jokes
Monday, there's
that
a
you're
guy called
coming up
Rinku
with?
Singh. Okay, Rinku Singh is a legend. So Rinku Singh has been with in the IPL for a while. He's this guy. I mean, like, amazing story of a guy who, like, literally at one point the only option he had in life was get a job where he would clean like toilets, etc. Becomes an IPL player. He's been in the IPL for a while. Hits 5 sixes in a row to win KKR the match yesterday in the last over. 5 balls
What?
left, 28 runs to
Damn.
get. He hits 5 sixes. And
Yeah.
Rinku Singh was like, and I'm like, everyone's like, what the fuck just happened? The commentator literally said, anyway, the match can't be won from here. And the other guy said, stranger things have happened. And then strange things did happen. So Rinku Singh, I have to say, was the highlight of yesterday for me.
Wow.
But
Thank you for trivia. You know what my highlight of yesterday was? Taylor
was
Swift and Joe Alwyn have apparently broken up. And Taylor Swift apparently is
Pete
interested in this
Davidson,
older
Pete
man.
Davidson,
It's not Pete
Pete
Davidson, dude. Pete
Davidson.
Davidson is like a butcha. Also, he's been like, Taylor's not that kind of gal. She's a classy gal.
Famous last words, famous last words. सबके बारे में
Fine.
ये
We
बोला
will
था.
see. We
हाँ.
will see.
But talking about where the world is at and where the world of business is at, what has happened in the news this week? By the way, I did happen to go by Geo World Drive Mall, where I actually saw the entire facade for Apple's first flagship
Oh,
store
wow.
in India.
Awesome.
Um, and there was an interesting piece, and I don't know if you caught this part of the news, is that Apple's actually the deal with the mall is that there are a list of brands whose neither their hoardings or brands can be shown anywhere near the Apple store in the mall. So you can't have
That's
Samsung,
like a
can't have
thing.
Meta. Yeah, they've actually, that's part of the lease agreement, that you will not have any like proximity of any of the other brands, be it advertising, be it anything else,
Yeah.
around the store, which I think is, I mean, I've never heard of someone putting that in a lease agreement, but
But makes sense.
yeah,
Dude, because they themselves will be like a pull towards a mall,
exactly.
having that and that kind of, architecture, attention to detail, the amount of money that I'm sure they're spending on this store, itna
Yeah.
to banta hai.
But Delhi में भी आ रहा है, Delhi में भी आ रहा है. Next
Oh,
store
really?
they're opening is in Delhi, is what they're saying.
Wow.
But speaking of Jio and Reliance, Reliance has secured an additional credit line of $2 billion from 18 banks after obtaining 3 billion from 55 banks. This is what happens when you do a gala like they did, that you have to take extra credit
Yes.
lines from banks. This is
Costed all
Gigi.
of 5
Gigi ka
billion.
cost. Gigi, Kiki,
Seriously.
Makadi and Jendaya ka costs nikalne ke liye. But yeah, I mean, these numbers are too massive for me to understand, but that's a
Yes,
huge
too
credit
many
line.
zeros for Varun and me to comprehend.
और क्या हो गया, और क्या हो गया, बताओ.
Next, landlords in Bangalore now charge the highest proportion of their property's value as rent, edging out financial center Mumbai, according to data from market researchers. But this is a thing, huh? Like, apparently, rates are jacking up in Bangalore and how, which
Yeah.
is kind of surprising because the job market's been shite. It's not like companies are paying top dollars for engineers anymore. So, actually, the first question that came to my head was, when was this data, corroborated and put together? Because it seems like dated news that's perhaps having ramifications, right now. But unsurprising, man, tech salaries, this is
Yeah.
what's going to happen.
Yeah, and but also you're seeing this weird trend in real estate, right? I think someone tweeted the other day, and there's no substantiation behind this news. Is the fact that
Hmm.
in Bombay, people are trying to move offices away from BKC, which is so central, to going back towards South Bombay, which is town, where it used to be more expensive because that's
What?
cheaper now than getting an office space in BKC. So you are seeing this. I feel real estate is going to go through this wonky period because you went through almost 2 to 3 years of people not sitting in offices
Yeah.
and are suddenly going back, and it's just this market where there was a lot of like spaces to get,
Yeah.
And now there's suddenly like people are in working out of different areas, plus there's hybrid going on. So
Yeah.
you can't look at especially commercial real estate in the same way you did pre-pandemic. Is has
Hmm.
at least been a broader reading which I've had. Not to talk about the fact that there's also talk of, okay, you can buy, properties in like smaller towns or coastal areas, or like Dubai targeting, which is happening. So it's an interesting time in real estate.
Yeah, I mean, you may say that, but like Delhi seeing something else happen, right? It is it's not the strongest market if you're it's actually a very strong market if you're a buyer because you're getting incredible
Mm.
rates.
Yeah.
But as sellers or even as landlords for that matter, people are having to sort of simmer down and come back to planet Earth. But before we talk about the rent that I pay or how much you paid for your apartment,
Mm.
let's get into the wildest tweet storm ish that happened this week, which was India's top edtech founders' salaries. This
Mm.
was wild, bro.
The numbers were they were quite something, weren't they? I mean, I was looking at that, and I think,
9.3 crores.
yeah,
9.3 crores, bro.
kiska salary tha? 9.3 crores.
That was the Physics Wala CEO's salary.
Yeah,
Wild.
9.6 crores, 9.6. Alak Pandey's
Wait,
salary is
whoops.
9.6.
Missed by rounding
Uh,
error.
yeah, and even like the Baiju's founders is what, 73 for Baiju, and 80 lakhs. But I'm looking at some of these numbers, and I don't get the Alak Pandey number. I mean, 9.6 is like, I don't even understand how that is a CTC's as a number.
Yeah, and even the others like lead, 1.5 CR, 1.6 CR to both the co-founders, Vedantu, 2
But
crores.
however, seems to still be doing well though as a business.
Yeah,
So
bro, but still, I
I
mean,
would just
it's
look at this.
layoffs in
Yeah.
1 second. Layoffs in 22, 23, 160.
Mm.
And like, and also revenue 141.5 CR. Again, this is not to judge, right?
Yeah.
Because to
Yeah.
each their
It's their
own. And
company. They can do
honestly,
what they want. Yeah.
one is their company, and second is honestly, if they have board approval, who gives a shit, right? Like pay what
Yeah.
and I think the other thing that I want to clarify is nowhere am I endorsing that founders should not pay themselves well because your your job is to run the company and run the company like you
Exactly.
would run any other company. So I'm all for founders earning what is due to them, and honestly, like if the lead guys can quantify and qualify that 1.5 crore comp, so be it. But I had a question for you. How do you think companies should think of founder comp, because it's such a precarious topic,
Yeah.
but how would you evaluate it?
So interestingly, I've been having some of these conversations, right?
Hmm.
Saying, because I've never run a venture run business, and I might be looking at having a business which is venture run, and that was one of the first questions which we had. And the more I've asked around, it's about, if you are going to put a certain amount of time, effort into any business, you need to have a certain level of compensation built into it. um,
Hmm.
it should just make sense from a broader
Yeah.
scheme of things, and as long as there's sense to it, nobody's going to kind of like turn around saying, why are you putting that there? I feel this news became as big as it did also because of the fact that there were so many layoffs happening, like in the thousands,
Yeah.
in cases, like, let's say, looking
That's
at
the only place
Baiju's,
I'm
looking
coming
at,
from.
yeah,
Hence
looking
my
at
shock.
Vedantu,
Like,
etc.
hence my where is
I
this
agree.
coming from, guys?
But my question also is this, right? And I know this happens across companies. We don't know in these cases if this happened here. Is that a
Hmm.
lot of times when layoffs are happening, you have senior management who do, either take a cut down or take lower salaries, or sometimes don't even take salaries, right?
Yeah.
And those have been cases that have happened. Like I've in all honesty, we've done that at Glitch back in the day, when there's a point in time when we had to do huge cutbacks and stuff like that, with our own scale of things. But in this case, we don't know if that's happening. If it's not happening, that's a whole different conversation. But it is happening, then it takes away the context of these numbers.
Yeah.
So I still
I
feel it's
agree.
still like you still don't have all sides of this, but
Correct.
some of these numbers seem quite large if you look at just
Yeah.
the layoff. So even in that context, when you're looking at the budget given to just the founders versus how many layoffs have happened, just a proportion, you can still have many questions to ask.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, founder compensations are also such touchy topics because
Yeah.
compensation isn't just in the form of how much you pay yourself, but for example, it could be, how much secondary exits you take.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of founders sort of, show that they're taking very little upfront, but then you'll see them sort of, sell their stake with every next round that they raise from investors. And then for them, secondary becomes a way of, seeing some sort of ROI or value from the quote unquote comp cuts that they took over the past year. So comp structures are complicated, and 100%, shouldn't judge the book by the cover, but 9.6 crores. Whoa. Whoa.
It's interesting. I just, when you're talking about this, I just noticed someone tweet or something, which is a live mint article talking about startups which have burnt more than 1 crore or more every day.
Oh, wow.
And you have, companies like, let's say, a share chat, which is about 240 um, a day. You have minus
Hmm.
240. There is Unacademy at minus 228. And I feel we're at this interesting point where I feel the questions around compensation, the questions around burn, everything else is coming
Hmm.
in, and I feel like we become this broken record on this podcast where we say that all of these are signs to look at, as much as you look at the venture space, as much as you look at everything, the entire, I would say, aura that's been built around the startup space in our country and
Hmm.
across the world. um,
Yeah.
at the base of it has to be solid businesses that are actually moving towards making money. And I feel these are all signs. These are all signs to say, don't just get enamored by the glamour, don't just get enamored by the glitz of it all. Are these going to be tangibly well-run businesses which will make profits in the near future? It's not, you can burn, but are you burning in a way that you will stop burning at some point in the near future? And I
Yeah.
feel these are all signs of that.
Yeah, also the past 2 years have been a reckoner. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
kind of don't have an option but to think this way. Though that said, we all thought COVID would be work from home permanently, but as
Yeah.
we've seen, humans have this, amazing ability of really forgetting the horrors of the past. So you never know, 2 years later when there's a, bull market again, and
Yeah.
investors and VCs are throwing cash at every single problem, you may see some of these numbers come up. But enough about founder comp. Let's get to the other story, which is within a year, e-commerce unicorn Misho has sliced its massive cash burn by over 80% and tightened its platform policies in a drastic shift towards financial prudence. I feel like every week we see these
Hmm.
glorious declarations of, wow, look at my burn, look at how it's coming crashing down. What do you
Hmm.
make of this?
It's a sign of the times we're in. Burn will go down, burn will come back up once the market kind of becomes more bullish in that sense. Again, goes back to saying, but at this point, how is this sustainable for the company to still maintain growth in the way it needs to, in terms of way it was projected to? Becomes
Hmm.
the larger question to ask. But I mean, prudence is always good, right? Looking at businesses with a sense of, okay, this is the maximum we should spend. This is the way to almost like tighten strings in that sense, is
Hmm.
always a good thing to do. And I'd say it's good signs. It's
Yeah.
not great for any form of job loss, etc., but it's a good sign for a business to look at itself and say, okay, where can we make this a lot tighter?
Why are you saying such generic things? Do
Why?
you think Misho will be able to survive in the next 18 months of,
I don't know if the
lack
fact
of.
that they've been able to bring this down by over 80% is a good
Hmm.
sign. So I'd say if I was unsure before, I'm a little more sure now, is how I'd like to
Hmm.
put it.
Basically,
See,
they're.
not generic. I am just
Oh,
saying
look
things
at
the way I
ye. Oh
think
my
about
God.
them,
I'm,
just
I'm
saying.
getting the nuance out of you. Wow, Varun. Wow. And what's the second last piece of news to talk about today?
Second last, क्या हुआ आज, क्या हुआ? L'Oreal has acquired Aesop. Aesop क्या है, madam?
Oh my God. Only the best luxury, personal care
I
brand
know,
that
yeah,
has
I know
come
what
out
Aesop
of.
is.
Are
Okay,
I'm
I'm
telling our
just like,
listeners, yeah, just in
okay,
case they don't know,
okay, fine.
because they don't retail in India. But based out of Australia, which incidentally has become like a hotspot for really cool, well-run D2C brands. But I'm a big fan of Aesop, man. What a Aesop, however they say it. Lovely hand creams. Have you used their hand creams? Have you
I have
used
not
their
used.
have you used their little exfoliator hand washes? So nice. Smells of grapefruit. But in any case, you were saying, so what about this?
No, I'm just, I want to get your perspective. You are all things D2C, all things This segment is yours, so please
I like
enlighten
this.
us as to
I
why
am I
this
am
is
I
working.
am happy owning this personality, this persona of consumer brands. But
Yes.
obviously this deal is insane because the acquisition is at $2.5 billion. It's the most L'Oreal has ever paid for a brand. And I think the super interesting thing is, if I'm not mistaken, I think Aesop was set up in the exact
1987.
1990, 1987. Yeah.
1987.
Yeah, so it's taken them time to get here. It's taken them 30 good years of, trial, error, mistakes, retail, mastage, this, that, and the other to get to where they've gotten to. And I think the reason why this brand is so powerful in terms of what they've been able to build is just not detracting from their proposition and picking distribution channels that are core to their proposition. And if you just look at their numbers, right? Aesop sales have multiplied by nearly 20 and have gone from 28 million in 2012 to 537 million in 2022.
Hmm.
Just like it's one of those, like you boon say samundar. I feel like that's how the best consumer brands are built, where it almost always seems like a slow burn, but when it
Mhm.
catapults, it grows really fast. What's your take on this, man, as someone who's a D2C enthukatlet?
I actually agree with what you said. Right? If you look at the fact that they've never detracted or gone away from, not try to jump onto somebody else's bandwagon. Oh, seems to be hot and happening. Let's do this right now. Seems to have
Hmm.
stuck to their guns. And that's what you want from a brand, right? You want it to kind of stick to what its core values are, not moving
Hmm.
away from that for like short term goals or gains, and really evolving in the right way. But I also feel it's they're a great example of building a relationship with a consumer base, especially in today's world where you don't have customer loyalty, right? Customer loyalty,
Yeah.
especially in this segment, is, I mean, people buy products from different brands every single day. No one really sticks to a few brands unless, I mean, I would say it's only from like of the old, you have older brands who people still stick to of some sort. They're a great example of that. And I'm guessing that's why the acquisition is as large as it is. And how much does it help L'Oreal? Is a question which is there. Does L'Oreal really? How much do they gain from this apart from obviously getting a brand like this? Is there
I mean,
something
it's a
beyond that they can gain? Is the
great
question.
addition to their portfolio, dude. In
Hmm.
between Shiseido, Clarins, obviously through the LVMH, group, they acquired Permira and they beat, sorry, the LVMH group, along with Shiseido and Clarins. Sorry, just cut that out. But basically, the point that I was going to get to earlier was, if you look at L'Oreal's overall portfolio, and the interesting thing is, a lot of international brands have been buying Gen Z brands. They seem to have gone the opposite direction.
Hmm.
Like even the Estee Lauder group and a few of these cooler ordinary is a part of the LVMH group now, but a lot of these cooler newer brands are being lapped up, like Drunk Elephant and the likes
Hmm.
are being lapped up by our larger guys. So it's almost like everyone has had a focus on how do I get the next set of customers to buy in. L'Oreal
Hmm.
seems to have taken a very L'Oreal kind of bet, which is
Yeah.
brand built for the generations, which seems to have aligned over here.
Hmm.
So, quick question for you: what do you think, apart from obviously this "boon boon se samundar banta hai" type
Hmm.
situation, what do you think Indian brands can learn from the success of Aesop?
Um, More than anything else, as much as you look at social media, D2C, online marketplaces as the way to kind of really scale quickly, which has been the way most new age, Indian consumer brands have really grown. You got to figure a way to how do you make that sustainable? How do you really make sure consumers come back again and again? Right? How do you increase that repeat value of consumers? And I think that's really the big learning here. Is that's what gets you that big value in the long term.
Hmm.
These guys also, like, if you look at Aesop, they also like have owned stores. Their distribution was very sort of like you mentioned earlier, right? They had a very strong focus on how distribution works, and that's what really builds scale. It's not short-term tactics. It's not, it's not. When you look at the portfolio, also it's smartly thought out in terms of the number of SKUs, etc. that they have,
Yeah.
because it's not. Nothing feels like it wasn't built to a plan. Nothing feels like a knee jerk. If you kind of go back across this journey and look at the brand. I feel that's the big learning here, is that don't build to sell it in 3 years. You build it to sell it in whatever, 10 years, 13,
Yeah,
15, 20
yeah,
years.
yeah, yeah. And I think that ties in with the conversation that you and I had about D2C brands earlier, which was it takes a different kind of capital to fund this kind of
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
It's not your VC flyby, 5-6 saal exit kind of capital. This is like we need to be in this story for at least the next decade, decade and a half. That 10 to 15 odd years seems to be the sweet spot for
Yeah.
at least this category of brands. And in case I made a mistake on this, I meant to say Ordinary was acquired by Estee Lauder, your favorite company, which you love to pronounce.
Estelada. But
And with that,
is that the stories for today? That is the stories for today. But guys, we have a very special guest today. We have a special guest who is coming up right after this. And I also have a very surprise revelation to give right after this break. Don't miss it. My revelation is going to make it very interesting. Going to shake you in your foundation, to say the least. But for that, you have to take a break and come back to Think Fast.
Hello, hello, hello. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. Listeners, presenting to you Club Saris Says, the premium tier offering for our podcast. Club members will get exclusive Cock and Bull episodes every Monday, extended and unfiltered versions of the guest episodes, access to the Club Saris Says Discord server, and audio offerings such as ad-free episodes and early access to guest episodes. Also, members get to decide the topics of the live episodes and get their name on the producer's slate at the end credits. On Cock and Bull, Cyrus and Abbas, that's me, are joined by Owen Roncon, Chief of Business Live Events at Book My Show. We discussed Italy banning the use of English language and the antics of an American couple on YouTube for getting viewership. On Pulyabazi, Khyati, Saurabh and Pranay discuss how with changing geopolitics and technology, many government ministries have to deal with increasing levels of complexity. And on the Filter Coffee podcast, Karthik Nagarajan speaks to Malika Ravikumar, an author and history buff. She talks about her love for history and how schools have made it all about dates and wars which students find boring. Once again, don't forget to visit our merch store on ivmpodcast.com. We have some exciting stuff for you. Follow us on social media. We are at IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you like our shows, please spread the word, tell your friends, and don't forget to rate and review them wherever you're listening to them. You will also find our shows on youtube.com/IVM Podcasts. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week: LIC of India, Yono SBI, Cash Free Payments, and HDFC Mutual Fund. Thank you for making this possible.
Ladies and gentlemen, before the show starts, I have an announcement to make. मेरे makeup खरीदा अपने लिए. I have bought makeup. I own foundation and concealer for myself. Welcome to Think Fast with me and someone who's like, what the fuck do these guys say at the start of every episode?
yes. Hi, Varun. What makeup did you buy? Tell us.
I bought foundation and I bought concealer.
Okay, great.
One is
So
from Clinique. The other one is from my favorite brand, which I don't like to pronounce. It's Estee Lauder.
Oh my God. Lovely. Estee Lauder
But
is
actually,
glad
in
to
full
have you as a
context,
customer.
I went to the Tira store, which I must say, because we've spoken about Tira in the past.
Varun, you will get cancelled. You are not promoting, my mother brand's competition on this podcast. It's just
But
not
I
happening,
went to
son.
the
It's
Tira
just,
store. I thought the
I
experience was
don't give a
amazing.
shit.
Like they were
Go
a
to the
great store.
Nykaa store instead. There you go. There you
Because
go.
I was in
Dosti.
Geo World Drive Mall.
I'm going
and
to
I
buy
walked
Ankur
in.
Variku's book. Now you fucking wait and watch, bhai. I am not going to buy yours.
Which
I
one?
will
First
buy
or second
Ankur
one?
I will buy
First or
all
second
his
one?
books 10 fucking times. You fucking wait, bro. I will even buy Ashneer's book. I will do an Instagram post with Ashneer's book
I'm
and Ankur's book.
just
and I
because
will
I'm talking
clearly
about proudly going to
yes,
wear
I am
makeup
not
and be
reading
open about it. You're hating on
Varun
me.
Dugirala's book.
You're
In
hating on
any
me.
case, we have a guest.
Yes, I am. We have a guest. Welcome back, Think Fast. We're still talking through the show, and we have a guest. Will you please introduce our guest, since you have button to not guest to introduce himself? Please, Suchita, do the honors.
I will be
Since
the
you have,
host.
yes, you
So
are. You please go.
So guys, we have the loveliest, person joining us on our podcast today. His name is Mr. Pranav Manie, and he's joining us from the Gurgaon. the Gurgaon, which is the NCR of the Delhi. And Pranav, the reason why we know Pranav is because he runs this excellent podcast. I'm saying everyone doesn't run a podcast. Varun and I are the only losers who have podcasts. No, but he runs this excellent Substack newsletter called Hot Chips by Pranav Manie, where he basically gives a really nice long form TLDR ish. It's not really TLDR because it's usually northward of like 3,000 words. Pranav, am I right? Yeah, but he's joining us today, ladies and gents. He is a Gen Z. He works full time at Bain, but loves to blog on the side. Sounds a lot like me back when I was his age. Welcome to the show, Pranav. We're so excited to have you on board, and not just because your writing is phenomenal, but given both Varun and I are aging, ailing citizens of this country, we thought we'd bring you in to really give us a little bit of, Gen Z perspectives on where culture is going and how content's going to be consumed. 10 on 10
Age is
for me,
just a
Varun. 10 on
mindset.
10.
Age is a mindset. Age is a mindset. It's not the age, it's
Sure.
the mileage.
Yes. Let's
Who
not
said
even
this?
get into. Let's
Who
not even
said
get
this?
into. Let's not even get into how you were describing yourself 10 minutes ago, Varun. You're calling yourself a temple. Pata nahi kya
Sex
kya.
bomb. Sex bomb.
Okay, but back to Pranav. Pranav. So tell us a little bit about how did your hot chips journey begin, and I'm assuming it started as a bit of a passion project, but where is it at right now?
So I used to write in college, obviously, and I used to write in high school also. I had a very cringe WordPress phase where I will not tell anyone what the WordPress is called because obviously I want to save my own skin.
Uh-huh.
But I used to write a lot of. Uh, I'm not super proud of that writing, but I can see why I used to write that way. College happens. Wrote a lot in college. And I was just writing. I didn't know who I was writing for, what I was writing about. But then the pandemic happened, and in the pandemic, I started writing on Medium. Just
Hmm.
because I was like, okay, I have a few ideas. I'm bored. हो गया college से जो निकाला था निकाल लिया. So I might as well give it a shot. We wrote a few pieces again around culture. I would say very much the predecessor of like what my Substack is now.
Yeah.
In March, I co-wrote a piece with a friend of mine, Paridhi. She has a lovely newsletter of her own called Opium of the Masses. I co-wrote a piece with her. We've been friends for a while. We wrote a piece on Delhi University's toxic society culture because
Hmm.
we'd both been part of like societies where we were like, dude, screw this, fuck this shit. Like, it's not. It's this is crap, right? And we've all been
Hmm.
sold that dream that societies are nice, all of that, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. But it had morphed into something completely something we didn't understand at all. We wrote a piece about that, and the reaction that we got was insane. We were getting mails from juniors, from people who were in the pandemic, who were like who had no job, listening to seniors, who were like demanding insane stuff from them. But like, and in the pandemic, you're like, "Bhai, ghar chalana hai." You have to take care of so many things, right? And we were getting insane mails from juniors and our peers, and we for a while, for once, I felt like, oh, I started a conversation somehow, right?
Hmm.
Felt like I gave back to college, even though all I did in those 3 years was take from it, like bunking classes. And I think that's when I realized that, oh, hey, I could, do something with this. I don't know
Yeah.
what, but I could just do something with this. So I think in July when my job started, I decided to like, oh, job के बाद क्या करूँ? 9 to 8 तो हो गया. उसके बाद what do I do? So I
Hmm.
decided, oh, hey, you know what? I have a few ideas. Might as well just try it out. So my first piece was about um, I am all I do is music. I do hip hop. I listen to hip hop all day. Like that's all I
Hmm.
do. And I was really interested in how music streaming payments work.
Yeah.
And I try to dive into it, read more about it, and somehow was lucky enough to be able to interview someone at Sony India through a friend, Sony Music,
Hmm.
and he gave me a breakdown, and I was just nerding out. I had so much fun, and after I wrote that piece, of course, it did okay, etc., etc. Some people read it, they liked it, but I realized that, oh man, I enjoyed this. I was like,
Yeah.
let's just do it. Let's just do it. And I like to think that Hot Chips is still a passion project. I've written a bunch of pieces since then because there are obviously times where I don't feel like writing, and I'm like, I mean,
Yeah.
like I can't force myself to do it, right?
Yeah.
But I'm glad to say that every piece that I've written, I have an emotional connection with. I remember what I was going through when I wrote it. Like I remember the tiniest details from it,
Yeah.
right? I remember why I came up with the title, why I came up with its working title. Then
Hmm.
it's good to feel that way, that I have an emotional attachment with every single piece I write, regardless of how well it does or how well it doesn't do, right? Because
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, it has to come from somewhere for me,
So,
right?
what
I
have been
can't
your
just be
top
good.
three posts? I think one was that Alcube one, which is how I got introduced to your, Substack, and then there was obviously that kick-ass one that you did on coffee. And I think the thing that's interesting about your posts is you talk a lot about even the data behind, not just data, but an understanding of demographics, growth numbers, so on and so forth about each of the brands that you cover. So, tell us
That.
very quickly a little bit about your process. How have you found resonance with consumers, and then we'll jump into all things Gen Z.
I mean, I don't know about resonance with consumers. When I wrote Alcoholics Autonomous, I think when I came up with the title, I knew I had something. I was like, hmm. And that piece simply came because I was partying. Like that's it. The sole reason is I was like in Gurgaon, I was partying quite a bit and like got drunk a few times, and I was like, दारू तो सस्ता क्यों है यार? And I wasn't satisfied with the answers I found online, so I was like, what if I, dig deep into it, see who I can talk to, and I did that. And when I wrote it, I realized that I had come up with something, and I thought it would do well. Of course, I didn't think it would do as well as it did. Few people retweeted it and it blew up, and of course, like I'm very grateful for that. But like I learned a couple of things from it. I think A, of course, the process of writing it, but also B, the process of how social media and Twitter work, right? And how inflection points happen. Like there's that one person who retweets and like things blow up, or there's that one person who doesn't retweet and things don't blow, right? Or like just how, or the time when you tweeted, right? Or why you put a thread for an entire blog post, right? Even though you don't really have to, or
Yeah.
why tweets with links don't do well. I mean, now they do even worse than they did before. But things I learned across time when I did Alcoholics Autonomous, when I did Boom Roasted, uh, again, like, and when I came up with these titles, I was just like, इसमें X factor है. And
Yeah.
the hip hop piece is something I've wanted to do for a long time. Like that's something I just knew that I didn't have the sort of like, I was like, how do I reach out to artists and people, right? I'm not really an insider in the music industry. And then after a while, I decided that once I had the writing chops to pull off something like this, where I was
Yeah.
like, can I connect multiple threads? Then I was like, okay, I will spend as much time as needed to, interview artists, to reach out to artists. I know that I reached out to the first artist, Karun, on October 30th, 2022. I interviewed him in like December something. 1.5 months to interview an artist. I'm telling you, interviewing artists is a long drawn process because you have to deal with like, scheduling issue hai, ye issue hai, wo issue hai. But yeah, I think a lot of those things I realized about, right, not just writing, but also like the marketing side of it,
Yeah.
right? And why that is important, even though it's not necessarily the nicer side of it.
Yeah.
It's like a necessary evil.
Yeah. Let's get Varun in.
So, just look at the broader Gen Z context, right? I mean, if you look at just generally culture as it stands, there's always this viewpoint where you have older folks like me, maybe Suchita, she's getting older as well, who get perception. We all look at culture from a certain sense, but if you look at the generation which is at its like inflection point, and actually I feel Gen Z is kind of going beyond the inflection point, and Gen Alpha is kind of kick in there now. Uh, how do you see culture in general? Because I thought the piece around just the alcohol piece, you actually got deep down into history, but you also gave it context for where things are right now. But when you take a bit of a macro point of view, look at culture as it stands, especially from a Gen Z perspective, what are things that most people don't get, which they should get?
It's a tough question because I have a younger brother, and he's in class 10, he's 15. Um, I'm Gen Z, he's Gen ZZ, right? At some points, even I'm like, what are these fucking memes he's looking at? Like, what are these, right? Like, these are more onions than memes I used to like see or whatever, or my friends used to see. And at some point, that generation gap will exist where you're like, oh hey, I feel like that something is just off. But I think the one thing that people often miss is how embedded like we talk about culture every other minute, every other second, even when we don't realize that we are talking about it, even when we
Yeah.
don't realize that our mannerisms are often influenced by these things. Like, for example, I know that my personality, I can boil it down to like 4 or 5 things, and like half of those are cultural. They're embedded in the culture of our times in some way, right?
Hmm.
I know
Like,
that
give an
I'm interested
example.
in.
What would be like a cultural aspect of you?
For example, a cultural aspect of me is, how do I explain this? Uh, for example, me being into hip hop, right?
Hmm.
Me being into hip hop gets you into things like sneakers, right? I mean, not that I own a single pair of kicks yet, but like it gets you into things like sneakers. It some gets some people into the whole lingo side of it, which can often be cringy, but it exists, right? It
Hmm.
gets you into memes, like very interesting. So, for example, one of my favorite meme formats is
Hmm.
now, even though now that he's been cancelled for all the right reasons. Um, so
Don't
there are
say
these moments in
Kanye West.
unfortunately, I was going to mention Kanye
Oh
West, but
my God, cancelled.
yeah, I mean, so I have a history with Kanye West because childhood and all of that, but adolescence mostly. But there's this like variety of memes where you have a lot of these clutch basketball or clutch sport moments where the player is scoring like a bucket at the last second of the game, right? And it's super thrilling. And the entire video is in slow mo, but it's scored to Father Stretch My Hands Part 1 by Kanye West, right? And like when the beat drops, then the bucket happens, the basket goes down, right? And so it's those weird ways, or for that matter, the weird ways in which we find different parts of culture meshing together. Like, for example, one
Hmm.
of my favorite memes from last year was this meme where the Batman, the
Mm.
Robert Pattinson Batman, which is,
Mm.
I think, my favorite movie from last year,
Yeah.
how it was meshed with one of Playboy Carti's songs, right? And at first glance, you're like, why? But the second glance, you're like, oh, it actually works because of how entrenched Playboy Carti is in punk culture and how the Batman is core to Nirvana, who like the epitome of punk culture. So it's
Mm.
these weird ways in which we like. I think we're also constantly surrounded by culture in a lot of ways, and we're also now being forced to question with like, oh, what is the definition of culture? Does it just extend
Hmm.
to pop culture, or does it just extend to, like, for example, I consider the things that we post on Twitter or the things that we post on LinkedIn also culture,
Yeah.
right? Because they define communication, they
Yeah.
define the ways in which we talk or which we speak or which we present different things, right? Like I believe the thread boys of Twitter are as much culture as and obviously mean that derogatively, but the thread
Yeah.
boys of Twitter are as much cultural as uh, like a Batman or whatever,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
it depends on the definition of culture.
Yeah. I have a follow-on
You know,
question over there. So,
go.
sorry, Varun, go for it.
No, I was saying that you said one point which is interesting, which is the fact that you mentioned that so always culture was this generational thing, right? You would say this is the culture of this generation, then the culture of the next generation, and you'll always be, and you see a cycle kind of repeat itself. You go back in history, and it goes across everything from fashion to pop culture to everything else. But what we're seeing now, especially because of meme culture, because of even like Twitter, etc., is that you're seeing almost a cross connection. Things are kind of merging together. It's not a singular flow where you're going from generation to generation. You're seeing this weird merging, melding piece where it's not following. I feel the last like 5-6 years have really kind of shown that it's not following the same pattern, right? I mean, a classical example is people would say that bell bottoms come back every couple of decades, right?
Yeah.
Right.
This classical fashion example in that sense. Or you look at your music, right? Like there was a period when everyone expected grunge to come back. It
Hmm.
has
Yeah,
kind of,
yeah.
but come back in a very different way. So it's when we look at culture, we always say, okay, this is what's going to come because you understand the pattern of the past. But now it's this weird mixture of things where culture is like, I mean, I feel like welcome is still culture. If you look at a Bollywood
Yeah,
meme
yeah.
perspective, right? That's never going away. Welcome as a movie is the foundation of meme culture in India. And I don't think that's going away for a long time. Like I have a Majnu Bhai t-shirt, so I totally am on that boat of seeing how amazing that is. Which, by the way, I have a great story. Anil Kapoor stole my Majnu Bhai t-shirt, but it's a story for a different day.
What?
Yes, that is my story for a different
Varun's
day.
full of surprises.
Yes,
But
but
like I think just to add to your like,
yeah,
it's great that you mentioned welcome. I think different forms of culture, like with generations, right? Like I think every generation finds a completely new way to look at an old piece of culture in a different way, right? Take Majnu Bhai, for example. The sheer number of times I've seen that same painting be, I won't say regurgitated, because I personally think that every single form that I've seen it in is all innovative, and it's funnier than the last one, right? But of course, the root of the fundamental of all of that is the original painting that we see in the film. But every person finds out a new way to sort of regurgitate the same sort of meme, right? Or the same sort of piece of culture. And you can say that it's rooted in for example, the Batman, right? Like the entire movie is scored by an album that was released in 1995, right? And like it's an album with a baby that's drowning in the pool or whatever. But again, like you would not think that 27 years later someone would be like, what if like, I take like this character who's always been colored by like this, I'm this like cool dark guy who has no emotions, to this completely different take on like this character scored to the most emo music in the history of music, right? And again, it's very much part of how we view culture. I think the fact that it comes up like different pieces of, and you can't predict it. Like you can't predict that, every 2 years bell bottoms will come back. You can't predict the life cycle of culture. But every now and then some person will find a different way to look at things and will probably cross it with something else, and you'll be like, wow, that's interesting. Like I never looked at it that way, but like it makes a lot more sense that now. For example, how we look at Om Shanti Om today, right? Or how we look at Mehuna today. Back then, we didn't really have the brains to look at,
like Om Shanti Om today is literally that entire Met Gala became, not Met Gala, the Ambani Gala became about Om Shanti Om. If you think about it, like half the memes are focused on that. I mean, I'll never forget the fact that look at Bhumi Padnekar's dress and that meme which said that is Jhumar ke niche milegi Shanti Priya ki lash. I was like, that is by far my favorite meme.
Or for that matter, every single Barbie meme that we have seen in the last week, every single one, right? From using Succession to use Just Can, or using the Om Shanti Om, the Deepika Padukone pink dress to use it in the Barbie foreground, right? Every single version of that meme that we've seen is crossed with another piece of culture that extends 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 5 years ago. Right? I think that's what culture is now. It's unpredictable.
There is that popular saying, right? History doesn't repeat, it rhymes. I'm forgetting where I got it from, but it's a really nice way of articulating. Oh my God, Varun, I know, I'm born with it. So much talent. No, but in any case, sorry, getting back to our conversation. So Pranav, when in the context of history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. As marketers, arbiters of figuring out where to take cultural conversations, because so many of our listeners either work at startups, run their own brands, or are in the general world of marketing and advertising. What are the and as a Gen Z consumer plus observer of the world at large, if I had to ask you to predict the directions in which culture is going, even if those echo chambers may exist in smaller niches and may not have the kind of widespread adoption that we perhaps saw in a post Twitter plus Instagram reel kind of world, what would your like globe tell you, right? Where are things going? What's the pulse of consumers? And even from a medium's perspective, I was always interested in knowing a little bit more of why would you pick Substack versus making like clickbaity reels on the internet, where you say the same thing 20 times. But if you could just talk to that, where is culture going, and how much of what was nostalgic can we see making a comeback?
I think if I had to answer it in one word, I would say culture is becoming more absurdist. Like 5 years ago, you would not have predicted that capybara reels would be this popular. I love capybara reels. They are great. I can see the same reel 20 times.
I am like Google searching capybara right now.
They are like capybara reels are the most popular thing on Instagram right now. Right? They're like my partner and I, my friends and I, that's all we all just share capybara reels. And it's just different versions of the same capybara in different formats. Sleepy capybara.
Oh my God, the mice.
I did not know this was a thing.
Reels.
Yeah, for that matter, the Instagram account of the Mercedes F1 team made a reel where they just put a capybara on the car, like, and that is one of the smartest reels I have seen an Instagram account make, because I don't think that a lot of like marketers or accounts get like content or being in tune with the times, right? Because they think that being in tune with the times just means, oh, what's the next big thing, right? But when you look at it much deeper, you'll be like, oh, hey, there are niches that are becoming significantly more popular, that are beyond just using that one song that's extremely beyond using Chand Bali on every single reel. No, it's not that. You look at niches like capybara reels, the way Mercedes used it, and that reel blew up. That reel blew up. You see a capybara with Lewis Hamilton, man. Like that's just beautiful. And that has crossed. That's also partly popular because you can say that, oh hey, Drive to Survive happened, and that made F1 more popular. And then this came in, and this made it more popular. Again, it's an intersection of cultures. It's an intersection of cultures that you'll never see coming, right? The only thing that I think marketers can, I mean, I'm an expert on marketing, and I'm sure marketers know the job better than I do, but I feel like brands need to reframe their idea of what they think is being in tune with culture, right? It's not just कि हाँ जब भी बड़ा शाहरुख खान मूवी आया तब हम उसपे मीम सारे बनाएंगे, right? It is not just that. और सलमान खान आया उस पे, हाँ we'll make every single pun on Tiger possible. It's not that, right? You'll have to be smart about it. You'll have to be smart about the reels that you see. You'll have to make sure that you're not tuned into what the algorithm tells you that हाँ कि यही एक गाना की सारे reels तुम्हें दिखा देंगे. No, you have to be smart about it. You have to curate your content in a way where you understand what are lakhs of people in India are globally thinking.
That's so well put, Varun. I think the most articulate person on this podcast ever, in
That's true.
between
I agree.
you, me, and Pranav, is Pranav.
I
Slam
agree.
dunk.
I agree.
You won the
No.
competition.
So I mean, like for instance, like I didn't even know capybara reels were a thing, right? And now I'm looking at it on the side while you're talking. And I'm like, this is interesting. I want to go down this rabbit hole today. So that brings me a broader context. Saying if you are a marketer today, how do you even keep tabs? Do you need to, like, I remember a while back I was talking to someone who said that I will only hire people in a certain age group because they get with what almost the pace and flow of culture is. Because anybody older, as much as they might try, they're never going to be as latched on as someone who is, let's say, between the ages of 18 and 24 will be. And I feel that kind of holds true the more the internet, as you said, the weirder the internet gets, the weirder culture gets. You need people who are almost like you're flowing through it. You're not trying to figure it out whenever you need to make a tweet.
I think again, like I think that generational gap is probably going to reduce over time, because we're someone who like I'm an internet kid, right? I've known how to use the internet for quite a while. Of course, the internet is expanding in its various forms and formats, right? Where, like the other day, I heard someone sent me a song that was a Doraemon diss, and apparently it's by a 19-year-old from Delhi, and they call themselves Gauntlet 2.0. And I heard the entire song and I was like, what the fuck? What brain did this come from, right? And that is unhinged, Gen Z, whatever. Person has 20,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, right? I personally think
What
it is
going on?
Exactly. And I am 23. I'm probably 4 or 5 years. This is a person who gave their 12th boards, right? And I'm just like, what the hell? And I hear that it's coming from some random Discord server, and I'm like, oh, wow, this is a whole of internet I've never, like, I'm not even going to go because I know I'm going to go insane with the million Discord servers that exist, right? Like, you never know how unhinged those could be. But I also think that it's just going to be, I would say harder, but also significantly more interesting for marketers to be like, oh, hey, what is the thing that we should be tapping into today? What is the thing that we see that, oh, hey, this is something that is also in line with our brand. If our brand is something that, if we're goofy, right? Like if we're trying to portray ourselves as being goofy or being smart or being intelligent, or just like the personification of Bruno Mars from Lazy Song, if that's an entire brand, what is that that we see on Twitter or we see on Instagram or TikTok that we think is going to resonate with us, right?
Yeah.
And I think I think people need, like, I think marketers need, brands need to be smarter about how to integrate those two things. Like reels
Yeah.
like these exist. Accounts like brands are already doing this, but I think it could happen at a much larger scale.
So where would you see communities really lie today? If you look at the word community, especially with the way, because
Yeah.
the idea of the internet was like almost like a huge community, and then you would build like
Yeah.
smaller cliques. But now you're almost seeing we're more bubbles now. We're all,
Yeah.
everyone living in their own bubbles in that sense across the internet. Sometimes you pop into somebody else's bubble, but as you see this going ahead, especially if you're looking at mediums like, let's say, Substack on one end, you're looking at Twitter communities are like, I've generally been iffy about how well that works. I don't know if you have a different perspective. I'm still a Reddit user more than anything else, but how do you see community playing into this?
I think communities have become significantly stronger over the last 3-4 years. And I think my thoughts are obviously colored by the fact that I've used Twitter for 2.5 years now. And I think communities, like, you look at how people describe Twitter, startup Twitter, leftist Twitter,
Yeah.
right? Um, um, Investment banking Twitter, like there are ways in which people describe Twitter, right? And there are no, like, there's no Discord server or Mastodon server that says, okay, you enter this place, that this is your space, right? The spaces are blurry, but they're also like kind of well defined, right? Like they seem blurry, but you know that, oh hey, if I follow an XYZ account, if I follow a mock Chamat account, or a high yield Harry, right, or a Nikita Beer for that matter, I know I'm entering a certain circle, right? And I think that, or film Twitter for that matter, if I am following this particular account or that particular account, I know that I'm going to possibly follow other similar accounts. I think pre Elon Musk, I think community discovering was much easier on Twitter, and there was a significant possibility that you could also find people, make friends with those people, even without having these well-defined boundaries of what film Twitter is, or what this Twitter is, or what that Twitter is, right? But these boundaries do exist, even though they are not like actual lines drawn like you would see on a Discord, right? So I think communities would become significantly stronger. I also think they might have the potential to be more alienating, because like I don't like it's just the way of the internet, right?
Yeah.
It's the generation, it's the next generation that's going to grow up without TV, or they're going to choose to grow up without TV more, like, right? They're going to be tuned in, they're going to be more terminally online than any of us ever have been, ever will be. And I personally think that I'm more worried about what the next generation of this is going to be, because they're possibly going to be edgier, they're possibly going to be smarter, but they're also possibly going to be unhappy. It's very likely. It's something that I think is going to happen. And I think communities are a double-edged sword that way, for sure.
Last question for you from me, which is, what is the next topic that we can expect to find on Hot Chips?
Oh, I mean, I did say about this on Twitter as well. My next topic is on live gigs in India. I have been like, I have a personal mission to like go to as many live gigs as possible, and I've already been to like 4 hip hop gigs this year. I'm a huge Seetha Mouth fan. I will be like, ये show कर रहे हैं, मैं आ जा रहा हूँ, right? So I want to expand that. I want to do it with more genres. I want to do it with bigger festivals. So I've been interested in music and live gigs for a while, and then I was like, why not write a piece on this? So I am nearly done with it. I think it should come out this weekend, hopefully. And I think it's something that obviously I'm excited about it, but it's also, every piece is more ambitious than the last one.
Is
But
this
I
going to
think
be 14,000 words?
no, not ambitious that way. Like ambition in terms of the narrative that I'm
Acha.
trying to draw, because
Yeah.
this is where I am. This is also thoughts on like where I feel like consumer entertainment in India is, and obviously like as a Gen Z, I'm obviously passionate about, oh hey, million OTT channels, or like million subscriptions to pay for, right? So that way I'm interested in where it's headed. And
Yeah.
for someone who's seeing live, so, because I've always wanted to attend live gigs, but pandemic was like, fuck you. So for me to see this suddenly blowing up, and for me to have also the money to pay for these places and like go to these places and see my favorite artist live, now I'm really interested in like, oh hey, how are other people who are paying for this, or who are not paying for this, or are paying for this or later selling it in black,
Yeah.
right? Because they don't
Yeah.
want to go. How are they looking at this, and what does it say about how they look at entertainment as a whole? I think that's the narrative
Lovely.
that I've been interested in. That's the narrative that I have written about. Hopefully, I also do
Amazing.
justice.
And ladies and gents, you can catch all of this and more on Pranav's excellent Substack called Hot Chips by Pranav Manie, who is a full-time worker by day, just like Varun and me, and a Substacker by night, just like Varun and I podcast on this, Monday night. So
I
thanks so much
I
for
actually
joining
had
us,
a
man.
I actually had a very fun insight.
Which is,
I was when I was looking at like my subscribers, especially those who have a Substack account. One of the most interesting thing that I found it one of the most common newsletters that I have in common with another subscriber is Varun's.
Really?
what?
Yeah.
Okay,
See?
we
I
do
was
not
yeah.
need to massage his ego, guys.
And by the way,
This
my
is how it
newsletter's
works.
been guys, great time for new plugin. My newsletter's been dormant for a while. It's
Oh
coming back in 2 weeks.
no.
I'm moving away from Substack.
Guys, you can
I
subscribe to me on Medium. I'm on suchitasalvan.medium.com. Just putting it in, just
I'm
plugging
going the
myself in.
convert kit route by really plugging into the
Oh,
wonders of
nice.
email marketing and saying, let's screw it, let's do this. But yes, well
What a
done.
gangster.
See, I might be old. I'm still with the right audience.
Yeah,
Okay,
man,
Suchita.
you're really plugged in. Though I am shocked you didn't know about capybara.
Capybara,
Caribara.
not
What
I
was
didn't
it?
know.
Yeah,
I've
Rodents,
capybara.
I've
basically
just spent
mice.
all day
I
today
can't believe
watching
the
Kisi Ka
internet's
Bhai
talking
Kisi
about
Ki Jaan
mice.
videos.
What the hell, Varun?
There is an entire couple of threads on Twitter of people claiming Salman's body is VFX versus him having a paunch. You go down that rabbit hole. I don't know which is more,
Oh
the
my
paunch
god.
videos or the VFX abs videos. And then
Okay,
suddenly someone put Akshay Kumar in between for some reason. So I'm just going
love
down that
this.
rabbit hole right
Love
now.
this. Okay, let's not tell
Oh
Pranav
my
about your
god.
fantasies too much. Thank you so much for
No, it's
joining
okay.
us,
I am.
Pranav.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Welcome back to Think Fast, where what are you recommending? What are you recommending? I have to think about what I'm going to recommend.
Yeah, you go first, yeah. I don't
I'm
know what I was
recommending that if you
recommending.
want to buy a personal care product, go to the Tira store. Tira store is amazing.
Oh
I
my
really
God,
enjoyed my.
Varun, do you want to die? What is wrong with you? Oh my God, you are cancelled. Guys, if you want to read a book that actually is interesting and makes sense, please buy Ashneer Grover or Ankur Warikoo. There you
Doglapan.
go. There you go. You are a Doglapan, Varun. I'm very disappointed with you today. You
But no,
wait and
actually,
watch. When your new startup comes up, how much I am going to berate it. Actually, I can't because I love your wife too much.
that's true.
But yes. But what is
But
your
no,
recommendation actually?
on a more serious note, what is my recommendation? I discovered something this weekend which I thought was a very interesting phenomena, which is called, and I forgot what I was going to recommend. What is going to recommend?
We-
This is what happens when old people do podcasts. One second. What was I going to recommend? Shirts.
Tells me, do you have something you want to recommend on both of our behalves? I have a recommendation. Guys, my recommendation is that Indian Matchmaking Season 3 is coming up on the 21st of April. So save the date because Seema is back and she's in England this time around and it's going to be glorious.
My recommendation is that you should not use piracy and that you should watch Ted Lasso instead of watching Succession on pirated mediums.
Yes, please. And you should also drink Patanjali ka toothpaste while you, I don't know, do whatever. And
Actually, a
also have
great podcast to
Gomootra while
listen
you're
to. I
at it.
actually have podcast recommendations. This is very random, like gone rogue on this recommendation section. This is a podcast called The Great Creators, which is Guy Raz's podcast. It has a
Mm.
very interesting episode with Jason Sudeikis, which you listen to. Very, very nice episode. And so check that out. It's called The Great Creators.
Such a sweetie.
And Jealous Me makes us log off. That's it for this episode. We shall see you all next week.
Yay!